Let's talk about a bread recipe that doesn't make you slam shut the computer when you go to look up the recipe, because I love making bread so much, but sometimes the recipes can feel really overwhelming, especially when you get started. So here's my really super lazy version. Here's all the ingredients you need: flour, sugar, salt, yeast, water, obviously. For this, I'm also going to add in a little bit of rye and molasses, but you definitely don't have to, especially if this is your first trial, because the rye and the molasses does make a little bit of a heavier bread. But for the very basic recipe, it's going to be incredibly, incredibly simple. You're going to want to start with some warm water. Not too hot, but warm enough that the yeast will get all perky and activated when you put it in. Should be warm, not hot to the touch. I honestly don't usually bake my bread with any kind of measurements. Horrible, I know. So I'm going to try to measure out exactly what I'm doing here so I can give you a little bit of an idea for a starter, but really it's kind of all about feel for me when I make bread. Then you're going to add your yeast to your warm water. I usually use, I don't know, maybe like a teaspoon less for about a cup of water. Then just stir gently and let it sit as you get your flour ready. Again, I usually don't measure, so for the sake of this, I am starting with about 3 cups of flour. I have a feeling I'm going to need more than this, but we will see how this goes. So to start, I am going to just sprinkle in a little bit of flour to get it started. I am also going to put any sugar and salt in at this point. Best guess measurements on the screen. And then I'm going to start stirring it up. So in this case, I am adding in some rye just because I have this nice flour that I want to use up. But this is the point in which you would put in any extras or flavoring, I think, when there's a little bit of flour, but not too full that it's hard to mix through. So I'm doing dark rye and molasses. You could do, I don't know, dried herbs, fresh herbs, whatever you want at this point, put it in. So we're gonna keep mixing until you can see it starts to pull away from this bowl. At this point, I believe I have put in about 2.5 cups of flour, of white flour, plus about a half a cup of rye. Yep, that's a cup left. But you're wanting to look for when it pulls away from the bowl like that. So once it pulls away from the bowl and you add a little bit more flour, you can start to work with it. And as you can see, it is not ready yet because it's pulling apart. Full disclosure, I kneaded for about 3 minutes on this, so I'm not doing the full knead on this dough. As you can see, it's still sticky. I keep adding flour and keep working it into the mixture. At this point, I believe I have about 4.5 cups of flour in this. Just keep working it for a few minutes until it becomes easier to handle. You can see, like, if you kind of pull it open like that and it's really, really sticky, still sticking to your fingers, it is not quite done yet. So keep kneading, keep adding flour until it is nice and held together. Okay, like I said, I kneaded for about 3 minutes, And at this point, I'm getting a nice kind of malleable ball. It is maybe a little floury, but it's not sticking to my hands at all. It's pretty easy to form. I'm gonna toss it in the bowl, add a little bit of any oil that you have to make sure that it stays nice and moist as it rises. Get it a nice roll, cover it up with a towel, and then let it sit somewhere warm, about an hour maybe, until it doubles in size about. At this point, after your bread has risen, go ahead and find a nice container to let it do a second rise in. I like a little basket like this because it gives it a pretty texture. You can also just use any kind of bowl, maybe with like a towel inside of it if it is going to stick real badly. But yeah, just flour your container really well, press down the dough, and then form it into a nice kind of shape that you want it to cook out. So you could do a circle like this, you could do a more loafy shape, a baguette, whatever you want, and then stick it in your container. To cook this, you're going to want a Dutch oven or maybe like 2 cast iron pans that you can put together on top of each other, but something that's going to trap that steam and make it cook really nicely. After you have preheated your pots or whatever you're using, go ahead, take it out very, very carefully. Put your loaf top side up in there, and then you're going to want to score it to let it be able to rise and look super beautiful as it puffs up. And there you have it, a beautiful, beautiful loaf of bread that was pretty easy. Didn't really have to measure once you get to see kind of what state you're looking for. It makes a really nice loaf. This one was a little thicker and not as fluffy as usual because of the rye, but was still a super, super delicious loaf. We started at 2:11. The bread was done at 5:03, so this is a sub 3-hour bread that, if I do say so myself, looks pretty dang good.